Hi, I'm Dana. Welcome to Made Every Day. Today we're going to make some really simple pillowcases that you will make time and time again. We'll make one from standard quilting cotton, and then we'll make one from cozy fleece. So let's get started. Pillowcases are the perfect project for a beginner sewer because you only have to sew a few straight lines. But I find myself making these all the time from only a yard of fabric. My kids love them, and I like to make them as birthday gifts or as a special holiday treat for our family and friends. It's just that little something that makes the bedtime routine a bit more fun. So here's what you need. 1 yard of fabric. That's it. I've got my yard of fabric here, which is 44 by 36 inches. Perfect for a standard pillow. Now this isn't rocket science or even sewing science. All we're gonna do is sew down the side and sew down the bottom, then we'll hem the top under. So let's iron the top in place first, it'll be easier later on. Now I'm creating my hem on the side that is 44 inches wide. That way, when I fold it in half for my pillow, it's 22 inches wide. Now you could do the hem later after you've sewn the sides and bottom, but I just find that it's a little easier to get it in place now so I can just fold it later. What I'm doing is I'm ironing it under a 1/2 inch all the way down. This way it will enclose those raw edges. And then I'm just gonna iron it over another 4 inches. And that will create the little hem or cuff or whatever you wanna call the outside part of the pillowcase where you put the pillow in. Okay, now let's press it 4 inches. I've got my little ruler or seam gauge here. We'll press that in place, then we'll move it down and continue measuring. And make sure you get a nice crisp line here. You can always press it again later so that it's nice and flat. Okay, now that you've got it all pressed, just unfold that. That was just a little prep part there. Match these up at the sides here. And also match it up along the bottom. Okay, just like that. And like I said, we're gonna sew down the side and then down the bottom. So let's do it. Now I'm using navy thread here because you will actually see this when I sew the hem in place. So I've already threaded my bottom. Just placing this in the top here. And I'm following all the little markings on my machine for threading it. It's pretty easy. And when I get to the needle here, my baby lock is fantastic because all I do is press this little lever and it threads my needle. I love it every single time. Now you want to use a seam allowance here that is wide enough to cover up the selvage, just so you don't see it on the outside of the pillowcase. But don't cut them off because it's kind of nice to have that finished edge inside. Okay, grab your pieces and just sew with a straight stitch. Do a little back stitch at the beginning. Sew all the way down the side. If you have a serger, you could definitely do this with a serger as well. And then it finishes off all of those edges neat and clean. Although, it's gonna be inside a pillow. Who's ever gonna see it, right? Okay, when you get to the bottom, leave your needle down, lift your presser foot, and just pivot your fabric. Then go down the bottom. Okay, made it to the end, do a little back stitch, cut your threads. I love this cutting feature as well. When I push it, cuts everything for me. Okay, now let's turn it right side out. And then we're gonna sew the hem in place. This is like Sewing 101, easiest beginner project. Super fun, super fast. Okay, now because we ironed this earlier, it's gonna be easy to fold it right along this crease here. So just do that very thing, hold everything under, and then I'm actually gonna pin this in place on the inside. You don't need a ton of pins here, but just enough that it's gonna hold it in place where we folded it so that it looks nice and beautiful when you're done. I'm making sure that that first fold that we did, that 1/2 inch, that is tucked under so that all those raw edges are concealed inside of it. Okay, let's see. That looks pretty good. Now let's just sew it. Do a little back stitch at the beginning, and then I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch from that fold. Just go all the way around. So simple. Okay, I made it back to the beginning. Do a back stitch again. Cut your thread. And now, let's see how it looks on our pillow. Just place it right inside. Pretty sure you know how to put a pillowcase on. This is just a standard size bed pillow.
And I'm excited to see how this looks because I want to redecorate my kids' room. That is gonna look fantastic in my kids' room. Let's try one more with fleece fabric. With fleece fabric, you only need to purchase 2/3 of a yard. That's because it's 60 inches wide, so we can kind of sew our pillowcase in a different direction. We're gonna sew down the two sides instead of the side and the bottom. Now I've trimmed mine down so that it's only 21.5 inches on the other side. So my entire rectangle is 60 by 21.5 inches. Now I'm also gonna cut off these selvage edges here because those might actually kind of show at the top of my pillow. There you go, just down like that. And the great thing about fleece is there are so many fun prints in the fabric store. You could switch it up all the time and it's really soft and cozy for wintertime. Okay, now we're gonna sew this in 2 steps. No pressing and iron needed. We're gonna sew down the sides, flip the top under and sew it in place. I've got my fabric folded in half with the right sides together and we're just gonna sew down each side. And we wanna sew with a zigzag stitch, and that's important because fleece actually falls into the knit fabric family. As you can see, it's kind of stretchy. So you wanna use a zigzag so that it can stretch with the fabric so it doesn't break when you put your pillow on. So come over here, I've selected it. I've increased my stitch length to about 2.5. And then let's sew. Do a little back stitch at the beginning and just sew right down. Try not to stretch or tug the fabric while you're going. Just let the machine feed it through itself. There we go. Cut your thread, now sew the other side. Turn it right side out. Now we're just gonna fold the top under, and we're not gonna press this because some fleeces shouldn't be pressed, it will melt under your iron. I'm just gonna fold it under about 2 inches. It's gonna be a little bit of a shorter hem. Okay, let's pin those around, just so it stays in place. And then we're just gonna sew right around. I told you this would only take 2 steps. I'm still sewing with my zigzag stitch here, and I'm sewing pretty close to that raw edge. The other thing that's great about fleece is, like I said, it's part of the knit family, so the edges are not gonna fray. Just keep going all the way around until you get back to the beginning. Do a little back stitch, and let's try it out. I think both my kids are gonna want this pillowcase. And look at that, pretty foxy. We have made a fleece pillowcase and a standard cotton pillowcase. For more ideas and tutorials, visit my website, madeeveryday.com. And for more information on sewing machines, go to babylock.com, where it's all for the love of sewing. I'm exhausted.